Hello, this is Paul Bruin, and I'm here with my good friend, Robbie, who we're going to try to figure out and teach and learn what's going on with Talend, a kind of a high-level overview of our system. And what we want to do is, where's my mouse? There it is. What you're going to always do is you're going to start, if you're coming new into a system, things run. So when things run, they start in Talend. It starts at the execution plan. On the execution plan, we're going to focus on this one job that is scheduled, ICC nightly run. The ICC nightly run is basically a high-level job in the TAC, which basically has a bunch of services that are called across different projects. One of the issues we've dealt with has been that we have multiple services living in different projects, so that what happens is we have to use the execution plan to call this from over here, and this from over here, and this from over here. So it would probably, hindsight being 2020, if all these jobs lived in one project, maybe in separate folders, then we wouldn't need to use the execution plan, which definitely caused us a lot of challenges over the past few months. But let's focus on one of the children within this execution plan, and that is populate. We're going to look right here. Just populate IIQ staging daily. Populate IIQ staging daily is a job that runs once a night or once a day at night, and it is basically a bunch of full loads. And these full loads are taking files mainly, but not only from Workday, but from other systems, and loading them into the IIQ staging table, and then from there runs into staging DBO tables, and then from there ultimately ends up into IIQ. So what happens is we go, okay, I've logged into the TAC, I've found my execution plan, I've found the job that happens that I care about that runs, and I see that it has a bunch of children. These children all live somewhere as code. And that starts off, the first thing that runs is populate all our IDR tables. So you'd have to go into the IDR project of Talend and find that job. Then populate IIQ staging daily. That actually is in the IIQ staging project. Then these other projects, you have to find out where these pieces of code live and then hunt them down. Populate all staging. And that can actually, you can help find out where those projects live by looking at the job conductor. If you check in the job conductor, give it a second, you can actually see the project name. So here's IIQ staging, and then this is the daily job right here. That's where it lives. This daily job that actually lives in this project, and even here's the branch that is currently being used to execute that job in production. And this is happening basically off of the tag. So so that's where you can kind of track down where that specific code is living. So we're going to focus on populate IIQ staging daily. We now come into we've loaded IIQ staging project. We've got a branch, and what we try to do is in the TAC jobs folder put our stuff, but not everything is there, but into here. And here's populate IIQ staging daily. So take a look at this code. I'm going to point out a couple of the key components that are important for this code. So first of all, we've been working towards standardizing our emails and our error handling. So to do that, Debbie Ramsey created some really awesome services living in a reference project. And whenever you create any job in the ICC, you should implement this process. There's a pre-job widget. This pre-job widget says, run me first. Run the stuff attached to here first. We're going to set some global variables, and these global variables are has error and failed job name. Setting has error to no, and failed job name to double quotes, basically to no. Because that way we can actually do some if logic in our error handling. And then what we're doing here is we're calling a widget in a service that's part of the reference project called. So again, when setting up the email and error handling, the first thing you have to do to any job to implement these is the pre-job. I'm setting a preset global variable, has error, and job name failed. It needs this. And then we have a Java service that is a part of our reference library called YUSetEmailContext. And this is getting the right information from the right context variables so the right emails will happen. So this is just making sure everything's ready to go. Now let's assume a job fails. So what happens is that we will have a job, any one of these jobs could error out. So when it fails, and in this specific, let me take one step back. After this pre-job runs, this is the first job that runs, which is tparalyze. Tparalyze is a Talend component that says, go ahead and do this, 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 do each one of these, run these all at the same time. So this way you can have multi-threads going on and a bunch of different things happening at once. And it's actually a pretty cool feature of Talend that I like. From there, once there's this one in the middle where it says synchronize wait for all. When you add a trigger down there, you can actually do a synchronize and wait for all that. Once these 6 jobs have run, then this job here will actually run. Then at the point that this job runs, we have a couple of if statements coming off of this job. Now, what's kind of ugly about Talend is that not only are the icons in the widgets, the icon in the widgets, a group of code, but the lines are code too. And so if you look here at this line of code, where that this line of code actually has Java code in it, has an if statement that basically says, you know, if this equals no, and if has error equals no, do this. Over here, now that line has embedded Java code where, well, if has error is equal to yes, then do this. So what happens is, remember back here, we set this global variable. This global variable has error is set to no. So our assumption right at the beginning is no errors. So far, no errors have happened. But at the point of a failure, what will happen is one of these 6 jobs will in fact fail and then go into the error handling, and it will go to the log catcher. Then at that point here, set global variable has error now has set to yes. Now once it's been set to yes one time, if all 6 of these jobs failed, it doesn't matter because it will be set to yes one time and never change back to no. A log row happens for the fact of the error being caught right here and then added to the array or to a buffer. Now what happens is, so at this point here, we have 6 different jobs that could potentially fail, with all running at the same time, that could potentially fail, and those failures will get caught by this log catcher. The has error variable will get set to yes, maybe 6 times, but it's, who cares? It gets logged to the log row and added to a buffer. This buffer is important because this becomes the information that gets stored later for the error handling and sending the email. So now, let's assume all 6 of these jobs have failed. Once all 6 of these jobs have failed, this line, and again, the lines are just as important as the icons. The line says, wait until everything is done, and then come down here. And we have a dummy fixed input. So basically, we're pretending to pass data. It's kind of a weird thing. It's a new thing for me, but we're pretending to pass data. Once we're passing this data in, which is the has error data gets passed in, we can then do an evaluation to see if has error is no, or if has error, again, I'm looking at the line, is equal to yes. Now, so let's say everything succeeded. It never fell into the error handler. It goes this way. We have another pretend input. We're going to log something to the log row, and then send mail success happens. So a success email happens. Now what's important about this is notice it begins with YU underbar. Just like this one here begins with YU. This begins with YU. These are all custom components for Yale University created by Debbie Ramsey. If I pull up my email, and give me half a second, and we'll find a successful job. What happens is this email system is basically allowing us to not have to worry about what gets written in the subject line, not having to worry about what gets written in the body, even to the point of if it's going to be red or green. And it even allows a standardized unsubscribe message. And the stuff inside of these two lines, this is custom code for this particular email. And we'll look at that when we look at process terminated worker. But you can see that this is a success email. This success email actually is coming from the child process terminated worker. But if we were to go to process staging daily, the service we're looking at, and we take a look here, it is this widget right here is sending this email that says ICC populate staging daily. Because what happened, all 6 of these jobs ran successfully, as error was equal to no, and then executed this. We do not have any custom message in here. We could add it if we wanted to. Now, in a situation where an error did happen, and once everything happened, then it's going to come and say, oh, yes, you do have an error. We have a buffer input. We're going to build the rows of errors and get information, and then we're going to send a failure email. A failure email is going to be slightly different looking in appearance to a success email. Let's see if we can find a failure email somewhere. So here off of another system is a failure email. You'll see that the word failure is happening automatically because of using that widget, and now it's read along with information about the same standard information, but more important, we put into the failure error details. This information will always be the same information because we used the send email failure message. Now with this process of implementing the pre-job, the set key global, the set context, the success, the failure, all of this error handling stuff, and this little if-then statement, what this all does is allow a standardized approach that developers no longer have to think about what the email says, how it looks, and all emails across all of our Talend jobs. Someday, I have a dream, someday we'll all use this, that they ran successfully. Notice here, success, they all ran successfully, or job, one or more child jobs failed. So now that's the high level of how to implement the email handling. Now what I want to do is one of the children that we looked at was the process terminated worker. Process terminated worker, now this is a subjob. That job lives over here. Oh, if I can find it, under workday I think. Worker. Process terminated worker. This job here, process terminated worker, if I 1186, if I double click on that, it'll pull it out. Now this is process terminated worker. Now what's interesting about process terminated worker is that this is an example of using REST services that are provided by Workday. Now I'm going to take a look for a minute at maybe roles. Let's go back here and I think role assignments. I'm going to also pull up role assignments. Role assignments is actually using several different calls, security groups, roles, and IIQ roles. If I click on one of these guys, process security groups, notice here that we have get MFT. So this is kind of a job that calls 3 jobs. So let's go backwards again. The daily job. I'm looking at the daily job. I click on process WD role assignments. There are multiple types of role assignments. And when I do the role assignments, I'm going to process the security groups, I'm going to process the roles, the IIQ roles from 1172, and then I'm going to run a SQL procedure which does all the merging. Now also notice something really important here, that this is a child job of Staging Daily. Staging Daily has the pre-stuff for email. Staging Daily has a success email. Staging Daily has error handling. If I take a look at process role assignments, I have the same pre-job stuff. I don't have an if-then set up for has error, because this is just basically the decision was made, which I disagree with. The decision was made to only send on error. What I would also like to do is send on success, because at this point then I know that it fits. However, the fact that this job could fail and bubble up, maybe it actually is okay that we don't send an error. So while I disagreed with it at first, I changed my mind, and that what I wanted to know was that, did this job fail, because I'll get a success email on the parent job. What I wish would happen, though, was some sense of bubble up to know that this child job actually had some sense of a 5,000 record per process. But here, we still have the same pre-job. It's down below visually, but it's still, that job's going to happen first. And we have error handling, that if any one of these components happen. Now, on this particular job, we're actually running 3 different processes: a security group process, a roles process, and a roles process for 1158, and a roles process for 1172. Let's just look at the 1159. This process here has a little pre-job, again, to set the email context, and it has error handling again. Every job we ever produced on our team in Talend should always have these things: a pre-job, set the context, a log catcher, hero, and a send failure. Bare minimum, that's your try-catch. That is your catch that will at least tell us something bad happened, and if it's a child job, a child job, a child of a child, I don't care how many grandchildren it is, that has to be on every single job. Now this particular job, Security Groups 1159, is using a reusable service called get MFT files. It gets MFT files, and it basically has logic in the context variable that is going to pull the right file down from MFT. From there, it's going to create a variable of the process of the file name that it's actually pulling. That variable then gets put into the populate security groups process. This process, security groups 1158, then takes that XML, maps it, and loads to a table in the DBO. Notice here, this child also has the pre-stuff to set the context and the error handler logic. Now what's interesting is if you go back to the security groups call, this MFT piece right here of the get files and calling this whole service could actually be removed by modifying this child service to call a web service directly. If you look at process terminated worker again has the pre-job logic for sending the emails. It actually has error handling that will send a failure out. And upon job done, I believe right here, it has a success email that this worked. Here, we have 2 client REST calls that then do a little conversion, and then from here it maps, and then it ends up going to terminated worker. So the terminated worker service is a really good model of the widgets you need for taking the 3 jobs that currently have web services available, which are children of Staging Daily, to convert them and get them off of MFT and using a web service approach. So it would be using terminated worker as a model. So what you would want to do, as an example, is on the security groups piece, say, okay, this MFT piece, This is getting the file. I want to make sure I have the right service to replace this. I want to go into the security group piece. And right here from this XML piece, this security groups for XML piece, this is where my web service call would happen. So what I would then do is I would add to this piece of code just another set of logic that would look like terminated workers and then end up going to this map. Or maybe I just duplicate this, disable this, and start a new screen.
Oh, good.